The Oklahoma City Thunder improve to 4-0 as Chet Holmgren dominates Victor Wembanyama, but the Thunder and their depth shine through.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Styles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, lothunderpod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by FanDuel, where you can go right now and start this season with a big return at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're talking Thunder dominate the Spurs in the end. The Thunder also saw Chet Holmgren get the better of Victor Wembanyama, and their depth really shine through. When you look at this game, all of the attention, the headlines, everything goes to Chet versus Wemby. As much as these two players do not want that to happen, and they want to distance themselves from that connection, it's really sadly not up to them. It's up to the rest of the NBA sphere. I think that when you look at this matchup, they can say all the right things they want to, and they do. You know, you saw the Michael C. Wright segment on ESPN NBA Today, where he's talking about how Victor won't even address Chet by name and keeps it team-oriented. Chet today discussed how it was all contrived as an NBA business, advertising opportunity. In the end, the lessons that you learn in second grade is that your actions speak louder than your words. When these two guys step on the floor against one another, there's a different level. There's a different level of competitiveness. There's a different level of aggression. There's a different level of emotion. And that was from the very first game. In the preseason a year ago, where they're stunting on each other after every single bucket. So, again, forgive me if I don't 100% believe that there's nothing to this story. What I do believe is they like each other, they respect each other as people and players. I think that the implication for Michael C. Wright, the only thing I'd push back on was I don't think that they hate each other. I think that these are two highly competitive players who are in the same rookie class, who saw the comparisons of one another, and they both think that they have the leg up. And when they compete, they want to prove it. It's no different than Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Obviously, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, was billed, and it's what built the NBA because of the billing and the rivalry and the attention that got. And those two teams clashed for meaningful games, for championships on the line. And every year, whenever they, one fell short of the title game and the other made it, you were left with this sense of, but it's not Magic Bird. Right? So that rivalry clearly laid the foundation for the league, but they also, for as great as they were, Hall of Fame players, they also played at a different level when they played one another. That doesn't mean they hate each other. They did commercials together. They've talked since about their now friendship and what they've grown to do. The Olympics was a huge deal. I don't think that Chet and Wemby hate each other. I think that they're just competitors, and they want to one up each other on the court and do it within the construct of winning basketball games. So they're not lying whenever they say it's the Thunder versus Spurs. Those two players have done a really good job of wanting to go at each other, but doing it when it makes sense to. There was another Thunder franchise star who took matchups personally, and it was, it did not help the team. It hurt the team. The Thunder with Wemby, the Thunder with Chet and the Spurs with Wemby do not do that. Like, they do not let that rivalry or let that cat and mouse game impact the flow of the contest, but it is there. It flatly is there, no matter what anyone says. And in this game, Chet absolutely dominated the contest. I mean, this was Wemby's, the worst game of his career. He played 27 minutes. He went 1 for 5 from the floor, 0 for 3 from 3, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He only hauled in 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks. He was a -4, and he only scored 6 points. Like, this was the worst game of his career. And Chet, on the other hand, who was working Zach Collins whenever Wemby, got hurt, and we'll talk about that in a second. Chet was 7 for 10 from the floor, 3 for 3 from beyond the arc, 2 for 2 at the charity stripe, 5 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 19 points, plus 8 in the game. Look, I wonder if we're going to find out that Wemby, the injury that he did come back from, he still played 27 minutes. I wonder if we're going to find out that there was something a little bit more to that, and he was kind of running off of adrenaline in this game, trying to get into it, but he just couldn't do it. And I think that what you're seeing here is the Thunder have dominated this quote-unquote rivalry since it became a thing. But I don't think that this is just indicative of like Chet versus Wemby, or the Thunder have Wemby's number, or Chet has Wemby's number. I think that Chet's an incredible player. I think that the Thunder are an incredible team. We talked on Monday about them being a historic team. I also will give credit to the Spurs and credit to Wemby of, it's not always going to be like this, though, and I think that that's what's so fun. I think that's why the NBA is laying the groundwork now, because to this point, yes, you have seen a game last November where TNT literally had to pull it off the air. It was such a bad game, and the Thunder ran them out of the gym. In this game on ESPN, yes, you did watch the Spurs get absolutely trounced, and you saw Wemby not play well. But when the Spurs up their team level, then this groundwork can pay off, because I do think that this will be an on-court rivalry that reinvigorates regular season NBA basketball. I just think that the Thunder have the Spurs number in the sense of what the Spurs lack is shooting, and what the Spurs lack is an ability to threaten you from beyond the arc. So what can the Thunder do? They can cross-match on Wemby and play J-Dub on him primarily. Heck, they've even had possessions where Kaysen and AJ Mitchell were on Wemby. And Wemby just cannot handle the basketball right now. He's got to refine that part of his game. So what can you do? It's why you see him struggle against the Thunder typically. It's why you've seen some of these lopsided scores. We just mentioned 2 of them on national television. Because the Thunder are perfectly designed to take advantage of a team where you just don't have to respect their shooters. And I think that that's a broader point about the Thunder's defense of, I don't know how in the world you play a non-shooter against Oklahoma City. Now, granted, it's hard to play a non-shooter, period, against any team in the modern NBA, but especially the Thunder. With all of their advantages defensively, if you give them a bonus advantage of, hey, you don't even have to respect this guy, then how in the world do you score? And it's why the Thunder have held teams under 100 points, except for in one game, and it was the second night of a back-to-back. So I think that this Thunder defense is incredible. They're uniquely designed to limit Wembanyama. And what I mentioned on Thunder on SI, whenever we put out our betting column, which it did push, the spread was 12, and the Thunder spread did push. But the Spurs, for as spunky as they've been, for as better than they were a year ago as they've been because of Chris Paul and him kind of steadying things, they've gotten in big holes each and every game. And this is not a team that you can come back from getting in big holes. So yes, Chet did dominate Wemby. But you see it in little things like the flashing of the wrists after buckets, the trying a self alley-oop after you have Wemby's back turned to you. Because you've put him in a spin cycle. Like, you see the little things where, yeah, sure, say all the right things, you should. There's no need to create headlines afterward, but it's there. It's for sure there. And I just cannot wait to continue to see this, whatever you want to call it, rivalry or 2 great players going at it, whatever label you want to put on it, put on the label and let's watch it unfold, because I think that as the years progress, this will be really, really fun basketball. But in the end, it wasn't really Chet Wemby that stole the show for me. For me, what stole the show was the Thunder's depth, and I'll tell you why coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Check out FanDuel today, because you can get started and tackle all the action from the NFL, college football, college basketball next week. and of course the NBA at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's FanDuel Sportsbook app. It gives you everything to bet on live lines, to bet on the spreads, player props, over-unders. Go there right now to FanDuel.com. Join today, and when you do, your first $5 bet can net you $150 in bonus bets if it wins. If you're not doing anything tonight on Halloween, you're not going to head out there and go trick-or-treating or wrangle some of your kids and go trick-or-treating. If you're just sitting at home watching the NBA, you've got plenty of action to look ahead to and to view at FanDuel, like the Thursday slate, which has Memphis second night of a back-to-back taking on Milwaukee, 6-point underdogs in Memphis. The Mavericks taking on the Rockets, 6-point favorites in Dallas. The Spurs on the second night of a back-to-back, 2-point underdogs in Utah. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Check out Thunder on SI and check out Locked On NBA for the Nationals' perspective on basketball, including NBA game nights each and every night, taking you around the association to dive into that slate of games. Also, we have our midday shows with Hayes, Matt Moore, and Doug Branson talking about the biggest topics of basketball. So you can double dip on that feed, Locked On NBA, and of course, subscribe to Locked On Thunder, your team every single day. We're talking Thunder Spurs. What stood out to me the most about Thunder Spurs was not the Chet Wemby matchup. It was actually the Thunder's depth for a multitude of reasons. The first was, man, I think that sometimes discussing the Thunder's depth can fall on deaf ears because it just feels like like something that you're adding to the mix without really backing it up. I think that you saw tonight the tangible reasons why we say this team got deeper. First and foremost, you can play lineups right now with any of one of the three stars, Chet, J-Dub, Shea. As long as one's on the court and only one, you can not only survive, but you can extend. And a year ago, if you only had one on the court, the only one who could really extend was Shea. And J-Dub did great at the start of the second quarter and start of the fourth quarters with Chet with him. But it felt like last year, Shea was the only one charged with, hey, it's only your lineup out here. Do your thing. Whereas right now, this season, you can make it with only Chet on the floor and not the other two. Only J-Dub on the floor and not the other two. And then you get to mix them, of course, all three, stagger them with two at a time. That possibility is only there because of the offensive leaps that Chet and J-Dub have taken. For Chet, it's obvious. Like Chet has made an offensive leap in every way possible. Scoring the basketball, flipping that switch that we discussed all summer long of he's got to be more aggressive. He's got to be more willing to take contested shots, to take shots that aren't just like screaming at you great, but because you're the second option or third option, you must take them. He's done such a better job at doing that and attacking the rim hard. So that's why Chet can do it. And then with J-Dub, yes, he's not had this in-your-face loud scoring game, but J-Dub continues to be the biggest energy giver on this team. I mean, the pick six slam, the steal and hit ahead the Shea to finish it off. He just makes such loud plays. He had 5 steals in this game. 5 steals. He stuffed the stat sheet in every column except for points where he only had like 12, but still, that scoring is going to happen. And it's going to happen sooner rather than later for J-Dub. And then the biggest thing is you have a team now that can survive and weather a storm without any of the three. And how often are you going to play without any of your 3 guys? And they did that today in a 10-point lead to close out the third quarter. And the all-bench lineups without Chet, J-Dub, or Shea, it not only survived that 3 minutes, but you did technically extend the lead to go up 12 at the end of the third frame. Because you have just basketball players everywhere where you can initiate, where they all can defend, and they all can try to score on ball at times, and of course get catch and shoot looks. it just gives you such immense flexibility. Flexibility that has been made in large part due to AJ Mitchell. And AJ Mitchell, I think, is the curious piece on this rotation. Because I would understand each side of the argument. I would understand if you are just blown away with AJ Mitchell right now, because we now look at this and say he was a really good multi-year college player. He was excellent in summer league, just absolutely excellent. He was really good in the preseason. And now in 4 games, he's played meaningful rotational minutes and been good in those minutes. And tonight was a career night for him. So I understand if you're just all in and you're saying, yeah, this is the guy. I would also understand if you're being more reserved and saying, like, hey, they're injured right now. What happens when Hartenstein comes back? What happens when Kenrich comes back? What happens when J. Will comes back? And I think that there's valid points on each side of that argument. I just look at AJ Mitchell and say, when you look at this season 3 weeks ago, the one looming question that we had was, who's going to be that secondary creator? AJ Mitchell is in that category. Tonight, he got the rim finishing going, which, yes, it's only one game in this sample size where he's been able to finish at the rim through contact, but in his basketball life, he's been able to do that really well at every level to this point. And now that you're seeing the progress game to game to the point where, within 4 games, he's gotten better each game at taking contact and finishing at the rim. It feels like he's adjusting quickly. How does that snowball over these 50 games that you're eligible to play on a 2-way contract? So if the rim scoring comes along, he's already got the playmaking. Like, he's initiating offense at times tonight, both taking it to the rim himself and setting up others on his team. Like, this could be the answer to your question of who sets the table in those minutes whenever you don't have Shea on the floor. And I don't think that that's crazy to say. I get it. The Thunder are going to have to work back in 3 guys who you imagine are going to be in their rotation, because 2 of them were in their rotation a year ago, and the other one that's hurt is your largest franchise, free agency signing ever, and he plays a position of need. You still need to up your front court as you did in the offseason, and you'll see that present unwrapped, as the year progresses here around Thanksgiving or just after, whenever it is that you see Hartenstein return to the court, somewhere in between the holidays. And there could be some reservation of, okay, when those 3 guys come back, the minutes have to come from somewhere, right? You don't get longer than a 48-minute game. And that's true. But also, are they going to come from AJ Mitchell? Because AJ Mitchell was the leading minutes getter off the bench. AJ Mitchell plays a position of need where, like, you did not put an exclamation point on your answer of who's going to be the table setter in the offseason the way you did with, hey, here's our answer for the Giddey problem. Here's our answer for the front court problem. There's more of a answering a question with a question about the front court problem, about the table setting problem. I would say you should be cautiously optimistic, because I do want to put out there that as much as we're riding the AJ Mitchell high right now, Hartenstein's a heck of an option to set his teammates up in a multitude of ways, as a passer, as a screener. Like, his presence is going to be that of a table setter, even though he plays the 5. So that can help pitch in for whatever you lose of AJ if you did retract some of his minutes. But I would be fairly surprised if AJ goes from these bulk minutes he's getting in meaningful basketball, where he played 21 minutes tonight, to none. And you might see it reduced to like 10 or to 8, but I still think that you're going to see a steady dose of AJ Mitchell, from the way that the players talk about him to the way that Mark talks about him, and they've talked about him all training camp long. It's like we always said in the preview pods, talking about the training camp pods, breaking it all down. The players are the first to know, and the fact that they continued to rave about AJ Mitchell was a pretty good sign. And so where are you not going to need a table setter? Like, you're going to need that trait of AJ Mitchell. I think what's going to be the difference maker, frankly, because you can replicate some of that table setting with Hartenstein, I think what will be the difference maker is you should monitor what his rim finishing numbers are from now to Thanksgiving. Because if that rim finishing comes around, as it did tonight, then he's beaten down that door. He's beaten down that door for minutes. And that's a second round pick that you struck gold on again. And Jada spoke highly of him today after the game. I asked him about AJ Mitchell, and he talked about, how the mid-major schools and playing multiple college years, especially, like that truly prepares you for the NBA. As much as people kind of put a cap on it of like, well, the competition level, the different styles of basketball you see night in and night out in those schools compared to a more traditional, a more uniform style in the higher conferences, it does really help you become a better basketball player of how to understand situations and approach things. And you're seeing that with Jada out of the gate, with AJ out of the gate. You're seeing that in a big way. So I just think that this team has an embarrassment of riches depth-wise. And they're 4-0. And you look at the schedule, and we had a podcast with Thunder After Dark with Brandon Rabar, Joe Mazzato, and Andrew Schlecht and myself. And that same group ran it back for Down the Dunk today. And those guys are not very concerned with the back-to-back and the Clippers. I'm concerned with the back-to-back, the Portland Clippers back-to-back, not because of the teams, but because it's another 3-game and 4-night stretch, which you had one in the preseason. You had one at the start of the season. You're having one again now. You're heading to the West Coast with the time change. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I would caution you not to panic if they lost one of those games to a team that they're clearly better than, to an inferior team. So I wouldn't just Sharpie in those wins yet. But nonetheless, I think that this depth is something special. And this depth is what helps you not drop those games against the lesser teams. And they're doing all this without any backup center. Because Oos has been really good as a backup 5. I wrote about him on Thunder on SI. We've raved about him on this show. He was really good again today. He's playing backup 5 out of necessity. That's not what he's designed to play, what he's built to play, and it's not what he's going to play whenever this team is healthy. It's just really fascinating to watch. It really is. Coming up, we'll talk about the Thunder Spurs game, how the Thunder defense continues to dominate. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. So a couple more notes on this game. Number one, the Thunder did repeat their starting 5 for the first time all year. Through 3 games, they had used the core 4 of Shea, Dort, Dub, Chet, plus they used Joe in the opener. They used Wallace against the Bulls. They used Wiggins against the Hawks. Tonight, they went back to Cason Wallace. And Cason Wallace played 29 minutes, 9 points in this one. It was a menace defensively, as you know. Went 1 for 3 from 3, but that one make was a step back. Really had a nice game driving the basketball on ball as an initiator, as a staggered point guard in those lineups. Cason was really good. I asked Mark after the game about the philosophy of last year. You guys had a set 5 every single game. It was the same 5 versus this year. You're having kind of a revolving cast. And he really highlighted a couple of things I thought were interesting. He said at the very end of his answer, he did say like it keeps your opponents guessing, but that's a kind of a cherry on top of why you do it. One thing I thought was the headline of why you do it was you're getting to stress test these guys in highly important minutes where you're in charge of how the game goes. You're in charge of how the game flows. Like those are critical starting minutes, and to get those guys in that opportunity is good for the individual, but it's also a tool to get the core 4 used to playing with many players across this roster. And I think that what that does is in the end of the year, when you parse through the regular season, however many games they win, and right now they're on pace to win 82, whenever you parse through this season, you can really close with any lineup. Like as long as your core 4 is comfortable and have played minutes and have gelled with all of your pieces, like Wiggins, like Wallace, and like Joe, and we'll see if Caruso, and when Caruso gets his first start, like Caruso, like as long as they've gelled with all these guys, then you can really close with anybody, whoever you think is best for that opportunity. But it's hard to close games with a lineup that does not have a ton of time together and a ton of meaningful time together. And this is a pathway, I believe, that you can get those meaningful minutes with those four guys. Because you could always run a team out of the gym. This team is so talented, they're going to run many a teams out the gym. But when the ball's tipped and there you are and you're running for your life and you're a shooting star, it's 0-0. So you've got to set the tone. So you can never guarantee yourself meaningful minutes night to night except for when the ball's tipped. And I think that's kind of why they're doing it. And Mark spoke to as such. Another point before we get into the defense, which was awesome. Shea went 7 for 20 from the floor, 2 for 10 from beyond the arc. 18 points in this one, 5 assists, 4 boards, 1 steal. He was trying some things, but I think overall, I understand first of all, of course, the sports betting angle of it, people are upset because his lines are so big, you're counting on him to repeat what he did last year. I understand all that. I don't really care about all that. If you're a Thunder fan and you're concerned, I wouldn't be. It's what we've talked about all week long. The threes are important. You cannot win a championship in the modern era without shooting threes. Your best player has to kind of lead the charge on that a little bit, especially on this specific team. I know that Tatum did not shoot well for Boston last year, but as a team, they shot very well. Tatum did not. But you've got to evolve that side of things. And in this season, the Thunder are 11th in threes per game, which is a massive jump. I mean, it's like a 14 spot difference from last year. And those shots are starting to come around on a team basis. And for Shea, you're starting to see it where he's more comfortable shooting them. And you feel pretty good that they're going to go in eventually. I mean, tonight they shot 41% as a team. Against the Hawks, they shot, I think, 50% as a team, or 40% as a team at the end. But there was a stretch in this game where they shot 54% from three in like the first quarter of this one. And then they leveled out at 41. I think it was 40 that they leveled out at against the Hawks. You're starting to see them coming around from other guys. For Shea, I understand that you want him to drive every single time because he's proven he can do that, and he still can. But as you saw in the playoffs, when teams are engaged, when teams are locked in, this Thunder team, like as a team-wide now, I'm not talking just Shea, this Thunder team cannot just continue to mash into the teeth of the defense because the defense is worlds better than it typically is come playoff time. So I just think that they're trying to evolve their game for the betterment of the postseason, even if it sacrifices some of the pretty numbers and the explosive offense from a year ago. Thunder at one point had a 19-point lead. The Spurs lead never grew past 6. 2 ties, 2 lead changes. The Thunder lost the rebounding battle 52-39, but they won the turnover battle. 22 turnovers for the Spurs, 10 turnovers for OKC. And Oklahoma City had a second best in franchise history, 18 steals in this game. And I think that the steals are going to be the attention grabber, but if you couple the steals with deflections, and if you want to go to NBA.com today and do that on their stats page, and couple the steals with deflections, you can really see just how many possessions that the Thunder, if not flat out end, literally with steals, they bogged down to the point of no return. Like there was a key possession in this game where you saw the deflection and it went straight up in the air, and Sohan gets it. There's only 2 seconds left. He's got to take a tough shot, a contested shot at the nail, and it's just off. And like that's the fact that you were able to get a deflection. Yes, you don't get a steal for that or a turnover, but you ruin their possession. Like you ended their possession. So the deflections, I think, are just as quality as the steals to show you what this team's true defensive identity is, which is chaos. It's chaos. Like they just want to throw you off kilter, and whenever you're having to reset multiple times within 24 seconds, the center team's going to have you where they want you. They're going to stop your possession. They're going to halt you from scoring, and it's why they've only been scored on 100 times once. For as much belly aching and diatribing that people are doing about 3-point shots in this season, and trying to conjure up ways to eliminate the 3-point shot, play the Thunder every single night. I mean, it's as simple as that. Play defense. You don't think that these teams are trying to jack threes? Play defense. It solves it. And the Thunder do that. They play defense and they're able to get it done. I cannot wait to see this Thunder team play a offense that is not limited in any way. Because, like, Denver, we've seen the early season struggles. They're winning ugly right now in Toronto and Brooklyn, and that's good. You want to win ugly because a win's a win, and you can figure it out later. But, like, they're not clicking by any means. They also don't have shooters. Chicago, no one's confused them with the old Warriors, Splash Brothers. Atlanta, they have Trae Young, who had 10 turnovers against OKC, but limited other than him. And then in this game, you played the Spurs, who we've already stressed how much that they lack shooting. So I am interested to see whenever you get into the teeth of this schedule what this continues to look like, but I still think that they're going to be one of those defenses that people talk about for a long time. Thank you so much for listening to today's Locked On Thunder. Until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.